I've always enjoyed fishing on small lakes. Being able to get up close and personal with your quarry, trying to outwit them, is an angling challenge that I really relish. Whilst it's often easy to find the fish, catching them's another story. We're at the stunning Springwood pool in Somerset for the next 48 hours, and if one small intimate pool wasn't enough, we're also going to be moving on to the sanctuary, which is just down the road, but more of that later. It's going to be a really exciting trip, as I've fished Springwood in the past, but I've never wet a line in the sanctuary, and I'm also going to be joined with my good mate Jim Wilson for the journey.
Like Lewis, I really enjoy the challenge of small waters, but they're not as easy as they always seem. The carp know you're there, they hear every footstep, hear every car door and every crash and bang, but that's always part of the challenge. Gets the grey matter ticking over, gets you thinking and gets you against the fish and makes it really competitive and makes it really, really interesting and ultimately rewarding.
I want to be a really famous fisherman, I just need the right platform. Come here Jim, would you say that area down there is distinctly more milky than the rest of this area?
That is.
Yeah.
That bit over there is as well near the aerator, that's got more colour. But that bit there, mate, that's definitely that's got clay stirred up.
That looks like it's hanging in the water, doesn't it?
All the way through there, actually. Yeah, because oh mate, in that gap down there. Look at the width for that.
How are you looking?
Through the weed, past the pads, the weed, the hole in the weed. Can you not see that?
You're looking at that's the reflection of a brown tree.
No, it's not.
Oh, behind
the back
it.
Of the weed. Look at.
Yeah. You just. Yeah. We'll be able to see him. We'll be able to see him, won't we? If we go down here. Just edit the bit out where Jim actually says where the fish is. It will just make people think that he's looking at the reflection of a tree. I think it's safe to say there's a carp here, absolutely sheeting up. Sheeting up like a maid in a hotel.
He's got a checklist in his head, hasn't he, this week?
I like this swim just because it commands a good body of
This is what I keep
water.
thinking about, this one and the one next door. They get access to a fair bit of water, but so do those two, don't they? Right, where do you want to go then, Lou?
You go wherever you want, Jim.
No.
You have first pick.
No, you're having first pick, Lewis.
I'll just slot in wherever you don't go.
Lewis is having first pick. You got a coin, Ben, because this is going to go on for ages otherwise.
You have first pick, Jim.
No.
Come on. Why don't you get yourself around there, Jim, in that coloured water?
Because that's where you want to go.
I'm not fussed.
No, honestly, mate, I'm quite comfortable. I'm going to go look around there again because it was this middle zone that was appealing to me.
Well, let's just go back around there.
Let's go have another look.
If you're going to rob a bank, you've got to do your intel before you turn up with your balaclava and your gun. Isn't that right, Jim?
He uses some weird examples of stuff. But yes, Lewis, ideally you wouldn't just turn up cold and do it off the cuff.
That's a bite. Down here.
Yeah. Just off that overhang, that brambly branch.
Yeah, that gap there, this side of that where it points out.
Yeah.
Absolutely jack the net ripper.
I've seen loads of fizzing spots, mate.
Oh, look at that.
That's a bite all day. Oof.
Oh.
That's a mega one, isn't it?
Absolute jacuzzi. He said don't open any gates, Jim.
Did he?
No.
I didn't think he did. It's 4 o'clock already.
So we've actually been here now for close to 4 hours, walking around, chatting with Lee, who runs the fishing here, and basically taking our time before we decide where to fish, because it's an incredible lake and there's options in every single swim, and it's not the kind of thing to rush really. We don't want to commit to somewhere too soon. So it's been a bit of a frustrating 4 hours probably, just walking around, umming and ahhing. But we've finally settled on a sort of our starter for 10, as it were, haven't we, Jim?
Yeah, we have, mate. As Lou says, it's an incredible place and there is options everywhere. Every time you turn around, there's another option where you could put a rig, a bit of fizzing or a show or whatever. So yeah, finally, after a good couple of laps and a lot of watching, I think I'm quite happy. I was quite happy for the evening anyway. We'll give it tonight, I think, for sure.
Yeah, so Jim's picked the swim we're sat in now, which is called the Island Point.
Island Point, Island Swim.
Island Swim, something like that.
Yep.
We're a bit bit rusty with the swim names, but I think this is the island swim.
Yeah.
And then I'm just round the corner from Jim, only probably 15 yards away, but fishing a completely different section of the lake in a swim called Swan Point. We saw a pretty decent fish crash out in the water in front of there not that long ago, so that kind of made my mind up where I wanted to go. But I am actually gonna, for the first hour, there's a stalking swim the other side of where Jim is.
Sorry.
One's just
Look at that fizzer
showing.
now.
There's a stalking swim the other side of Jim. There's a bit of fizzing going on there, just a couple of rod lengths out. So we're at like 4:30. It's dark at 8, so I'm going to have an hour stalking. Then I'll get my bivvy set up and get my rods out in the Swan Point for the night ahead. So yeah, we've finally got a plan. Jim's starting off in the island swim. I'm going to start off with an hour's of stalking, and then I'm going to be in Swan Point for the night, unless something changes in the time that we're setting everything up, I guess.
Oh, cool. There we go, look. God, look at that. Right, just been doing a little bit of leading up. Didn't want to do too much because of the size of the lake and how intimate it is, and obviously the shallow depths, but ultimately, when it comes to trips like this, there's no point putting rigs out that you don't think are fishing, because I'll just sit there all evening questioning it. So what I've done is I've leaded up 2 areas that look relatively weed free in terms of all the pads and surface weed that you can see around the lake. And what I've managed to find is 2 what I think are epic areas. The left-hander, relatively shallow, struggle to get a drop. It's obviously short range, and obviously you get a little bit of sort of bounce back on the cast as well. So I've had to put a little bit extra on the clip to get the drop I want. But as you've just seen, I'm managing to get like a 2 or 3 foot pullback. On that, I'm getting a little bit of Canadian and probably 6 to 8 inches of silkweed on average. So when it comes to tactics, I'm going to look at fishing a low line pop up on that on a spinner. And then the right hand side, slightly deeper, much firmer bottom, and I'm getting a much better pullback as well near that aerator. Now both of those spots are just on the near side edge of an area that we saw a lot of activity when we spent a good couple of hours looking earlier. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of bait, fish for a bite at a time, and by a little bit I mean a pouch full of 2 a boilie. That's going to be it. Alternative colour up baits over the top as opposed to match the hatch, just to give it a little bit more attraction, give it a bit of a signal, and then hopefully we'll have some good news for you. I'm well happy with them. Right, obviously, if you've seen, we've been doing a bit of leading. I've got the spots sorted in my head that I'm really happy with. Now I'm going to get the rods out. Gone nice and simple. I've got heavy fluorocarbon mainline, that's 19-pound Illusion Transcarkey. I've got 18 inches of rig tubing, which is the tungsten. Slick lead clips so the lead can come off easy. 4-ounce lead on the right-hand rod because of how clean that spot feels and how well it pulls back. And then for the technology side of it, 6-7 inches of 30-pound Illusion fluorocarbon to a D-rig and a waft the hook bait. It's obviously covered by the foam because I just want to make sure the presentation's absolutely bang on. So we're going to get this one in, and then we'll get the left-hander in and we'll get rocking. So the right-hander went out really well. Sorry about the bad dancing, but that was a really good drop. Obviously, we're new to this lake. I've never been here before. Lewis has. He always likes an advantage, bless him. But I've never been here before, so that drop was really good. A couple of pouchfuls of bait over it, so probably 25, 30 boilies in total. Bit of liquid, bit of salt as well, just because of the time of year. And now we're going to get the left-hander out, and hopefully I'll get the drop I'm looking for first time. I'll do. Right, let's get that fluorocarbon down. Yeah. Sweet. Look, I've got to have my handles up.
So I had an hour stalking down the bank there. Unfortunately, as soon as I lowered the rig in, the fizzing stopped and it pushed on a bit further out behind some pads in an area I couldn't fish. So gave it an hour. Now I come round into the swim I'm going to fish the night. It's quite an intimate swim, as most of them are on this lake due to the nature with the pads everywhere. I've just been having a little flick around. Now I'm not really one for light leads. I like to use a 4 ounce minimum wherever possible. So I've got 4 on. It's so shallow, it's very hard to get a drop. You can, if you just catch it right, you can just get the quickest of drops, but it's very hard to say for sure it's a rock hard drop or whatever. So the main kind of thing I'm looking for is whether or not there's debris on the bottom. So I've got an old rig on, I'm casting that. If I can feel a drop, great. If not, I'm whipping the rod up, and if it's coming in clean, then I know that then it's presentable. I'm not that bothered about it being on rock hard ground because it's a silty lake. We're seeing fish fizzing up all over the place, which suggests to me that they're feeding in the softer silt anyway. So I'm happy to fish a balanced bottom bait on the softer silt with a heavy lead. They'll be digging around in that silt anyway. So I found a nice little area here. I think it's not far out at all. You do get the tiniest of drops. It comes in clean, and that'll do me for my opening gambit tonight. And if it doesn't prove successful, I'll try something else tomorrow. But having been here 3 years ago and fished this lake for 48 hours, it's what I did then, and I had 3 fish in 2 nights. So why not start with something that you know worked before. I've just put the second rod out now, and I'm just going to put a few freebies out with a catapult. Due to the range that I'm fishing at, which is very close range, I'm choosing to use a catapult that's actually designed for match fishing. It's from a leading match fishing brand, Matrix, and it's perfect for firing single, 2 and up to 3 with these size baits, up to 3, which these are 15 or 16 mil. You can get 3 in this little pouch, and you can literally just ping them at what this range must be. I don't know, it's 15, 20 yards, it's not far. So with the normal traditional carp catapults, the elastic's much thicker, and it's very hard at that range to gauge how, you either pull it too hard and your baits fly miles, and because you're putting so many baits in a pouch on a carp catapult, one wrong pouch, that's a lot of bait in the area you don't want it. So at this real intimate range, because of the pads, I want to be really accurate, and I can just ping the boilies out and put in a few into the pads beyond where I'm fishing, because that's where the fish are, and then I'm only able to fish on this side of those pads, trying to be as safe as possible. I don't want to be fishing my lines through a load of pads, so I'm fishing this side, so I'm pinging a few boilies past where I'm fishing in and around the pads, with the hope being that I'm going to draw those fish from the safe haven. They're going to start picking up a few baits into the pads. As they come out, follow it. They're preoccupied on food, they're less cautious, taking note that they've actually come onto the danger side of the pads, as it were, and then hopefully there's a bit more of a concentration of bait around my rig, so I'm putting the majority of my bait around where the hook bait is, and then just a few behind. Then obviously they get onto the more concentrated area, hopefully a bit of a feeding frenzy, rig sucked in without any caution, and we get a fish. That's the plan. Just ping them out. And because you're only firing a couple at a time, it's much more discreet than a big pouch full out of a carp catapult. It's like in there, you just ping, ping. And I fancy the carp are less spooky to that sort of pinging out of single baits rather than mass baiting. But we'll see. I heard Jim baiting up earlier, and it sounded like he was pounding it in with a carp catapult. So if he catches more than me, then yeah, what do I know? But looking forward to the first evening here now. I don't know what time it is. It must be going on for 7, and we haven't eaten yet. So next job is, now the fish are being fed, it's for me, Ben and Jim to feed as well. So it's always nervous that first night, but exciting at the same time. Well, sadly not a lot to report this morning. It was a quiet night other than quite a bit of rain. It's raining still now and it's sadly forecast to rain all day. It's not looking great on the weather, but it is what it is. I've decided to move early. I gave it until 6:30, 7:15 where I was. Despite hearing quite a few fish show behind where I was fishing, I didn't see or hear anything where my rigs were, and something inside me was telling me I needed to move. So I've moved. I've moved to the other end of the lake now, and the swim I've chosen, my pod isn't suitable for that swim because I'm going to be splitting my rods, fishing 2 single sticks out in different directions. The beauty with the QR system is I can literally just take one of my alarms off, put it onto a bank stick, take a second alarm off the pod, put that onto another bank stick, and then what I'll be doing, because I don't carry loads and loads of bank sticks with me, is I'll be removing 2 of the bank sticks off my pod, and again I can just take the backrest off using the QR, and then the second one like that. So in no time at all I've gone from having my pod to now 2 single sticks, and I can get them in position left and right in the swim. Plan is to sit here all day. I think it could be a day area. When we arrived yesterday there was coloured water and fizzing in this area, and there's a bit of fizzing this morning, so I'm going to give it all day and then I may move again this evening. Hopefully it will stop raining if I do move, but if I've seen enough or feel confident enough here, I'll stay. So yeah, it's one of them, you just got to try and make it happen, and that's what I'm going to do. So both rods are now out. It's quite quick to do. There's 2 spots I've decided to put rigs on. They're pretty obvious in the sense there's natural clear channels amongst the weed and pads. So just did 1 quick underarm flick on each one, reeled in, they were clean. So I put them back out, and then they've literally just had about a dozen baits on each one. I'm not going heavy here. Like I said, it could just be a day session in this swim. We'll see how it goes. My left hand rod is about a rod length or so off of one of the Airstone aerators. We've seen some fizz in there this morning and yesterday when we got here, so hopefully that's a good option. My right hand rod's sort of going out into the main body of the lake. My left hand rod is sort of in the little bay that sort of dog legs around. My right hand one is sort of facing the main body of water. Again, it's very close in, but it's not far from an area where fish consistently showed through the night from what Jim has said this morning. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Just gone with a very simple lead clip arrangement, fluorocarbon leader, 40 pound, 0.60 diameter, nice and thick, heavy so it sinks, but with these pads if I hook a fish it's just going to cut through the pads really easy. And then for the hook link itself, again fluorocarbon, the 19 pound Illusion again, D-rig style with a stiff rig barbless hook, and then I've gone for one of the GS10 boilie hook baits with a pink Northern Special whittled down on top. Rules on this lake are that you have to fish with the essential baits. It makes sense that the lake is owned by Essential Baits. The fish are fed the GS10 and the Essential B5 all the time. So yeah, I've fed the GS10. I've got a GS10 bottom bait and then like a little pink Northern Special on top for that bit of colour, because the water is coloured itself, so a bit of visual hopefully will just make my hook bait stand out against the freebies. So we'll see, yeah.
Well, we're about 24 hours fishing time in now, and it's been frustrating is probably the best way I can put it. We've had a huge amount of rain today, which has made it challenging to see what's been going on. There's been a few shows, and I'm under no illusion that there's been a hell of a lot of fizzing during the day, because now the rain stopped, the fizzing has become really sort of obvious and quite pronounced in some areas as well. Very quiet night for me, so first thing this morning, just after first light, I had a change around on the rigs and the presentations, changed the colours of the hook baits as well, because it felt like I should have had a bite. So you know what it's like, if you feel like something should have happened and it hasn't, you need to make a change to try and instigate that bite, but that didn't work either. So sort of early afternoon I had a change around again, slightly different presentations again as well. So I've gone from a Ronnie and a D-rig on the rods to snowmans this morning, because I wanted to see if I needed them sort of nailed on the bottom without that wobble and without that extra movement. So I went to quite heavy hook baits, and then midday-ish I switched to hinges with real bright ones and real smelly ones, because there's a lot of colour in the water. So these are what's out there at the minute, trusty hinges. Little bit higher than I would normally fish the hinge section, and the reason for that is the bottom's really soft in a lot of places, so I just want to make sure that's clear. And that's a soft coated braid boom, probably about 8 to 10 inches in length. Again, a little bit longer than I would fish if it was harder ground, just so that I can make sure it's set properly off the back of the lead clip that I'm fishing. And then that's a bright yellow pineapple that's flavoured up, so it's really smelly for the coloured water. This time of year, I'm normally a match the hatch if I'm in my campaign fishing, but because this is a one-off trip somewhere new and the water clarity is not great, I really want that sort of smell signal there as well as the visual thing, hence the bright yellow that's really well flavoured up. Gonna give them till half hour before dusk, and then I'll put some fresh rigs on for the night and put the rods back out and see where it goes. Yeah. Really cool little place, this Springwood pool. It's mega, but it's frustrating. So hopefully we'll keep putting the effort in and we'll be able to show you some rewards for it.
Well, it's been an absolutely miserable day. I was just in the bivvy keeping dry, listening to a podcast, and my rod has rattled off. Unfortunately, it looks like one of the self breeds or one of the stockies that are in the lake. When we walked around yesterday, Lee told us that there had been a few stockies added and also some fish had bred successfully. So there was a chance if you got a bite, it could be small. And yeah, this one unfortunately is on the small side, but it's a bite, which after a very quiet first 24 hours, oh, there's so much weed. Is it in? It's in. Yeah, she's in. Yeah. It's got some scales on it, looks nice. But yeah, after a very quiet first 24 hours, like I say, the misery of this rain, it's just nice to have heard the alarm go and the adrenaline buzz. Lovely. Well, there it is. I'm going to have to admit, be honest here, this is not what I imagined catching when I set off on the 200-mile drive yesterday. However, it's very pretty and it's a start, and given the first 24 hours have been basically non-stop rain and sitting watching motionless bobbins, I'm actually probably as happy to have caught an 8-pound scaly mirror as I've ever been since I was a child first started carp fishing. It's just going to give me that little boost now to put a bit more extra effort in this afternoon into this evening and try and get one of those fish that look like this but are 30-35 pound bigger on the mat to show you before we have to move onto the sanctuary tomorrow. So let's get him back, try and catch his parents. We're now about 7 PM on our second evening. Sadly, no more fish to report for myself or Jim. I've decided to stay put in the swim that I've caught from. My initial plan this morning was to do the day here and then move down the other end of the lake for tonight if it was quiet and nothing was happening here. having had a fish, albeit not the biggest in the world, that's sort of given me the confidence to stay put. Also, there is a lot of coloured water in this bay to my left, a lot of fizzing. Since the rain eased about an hour or so ago, the fizzing's more evident. The coloured water is clear to see as well. So whilst I can't fish right where that coloured water is, I can get to within probably 15 yards or so. There's a lot of weed and pads in between me and that area, but I'm sure as darkness comes, those fish will feel a bit more confident to creep this way. And if they decide to leave that bay, they have to come over my rods. So yeah, I'm going to give it the night here, and hopefully we'll have a change of fortune before we have to pack away. We'll have you know, the whole night, first light up until about mid-morning tomorrow. So I'm not ruling out another move early tomorrow morning. If I'm not feeling it here, then I will potentially move for the last few hours before we have to pack up and head up down the road to the sanctuary. The weather feels a lot better now. The rain's subsided, albeit the forecast is saying there's more to come tonight. So this might just be a short respite. But yeah, I'm feeling confident. Like I say, having a fish always gives you a bit more confidence, and seeing the odd big fish jump today. So let's see how we go.
I might need you to move because you stood on the landing net.
Good point.
Oh. Well, that was a little bit of excitement. I was just being a greedy lad and finishing my tea, and one of the rods on the hinges has pulled up tight. So that little bit of theory I worked on earlier has been successful. Ben the cameraman just stood on the landing net, so I'm going to have to go get that now. But yeah, so it's only a little one, but that's a proper little excitement and a nice little buzz. Right, let's try and get this boy in. Big old yellow hookbait hanging out of its gob. Oh, it's cool scaly. Yeah, cool scales. Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. There we go. Yes. Andy ain't got bragging rights anymore, has he? Oh, that'll do, Ben. We're off the mark. We can build on that. Well, there we go. Just over £12 of lovely mirror carp. This is the future of Springwood Pool. What an awesome creature that is as well. The theory about the bigger hinges didn't quite work out for the bigger ones, but the hook bait choices got me the bite, so I can't complain at all. And it's looking good for another one, so let's hope I ain't tempted fate and absolutely boshed it on the head now, but conditions are mega and it does look good. He's cool.
So sadly, another quiet night for both myself and Jim on Springwood, and first light has also proved unsuccessful. The fish actually haven't been very active this morning. I don't know whether it was all the rain yesterday and through the night. It's just been a quiet morning. Quite frustrating really. So given the fact that nothing's happening in my swim, I thought I'd take this opportunity just to go through the rig that I caught on yesterday very briefly. There's not a lot to say. It's a rig I've covered before on videos. I'll just skirt over it nice and promptly. So it's a fluorocarbon D rig. It's tied with the Illusion in £19, and this is the new Naturals Green Illusion. a stiff rig hook, so that's a outturned eye. Just with this stiff fluorocarbon, it just gets a nice wide gape between the from where the line exits the eye of the hook and the point of the hook. On the D is a little mini hook ring swivel. The hook bait is a GS10 bottom bait. The G stands for garlic, the S stands for salt. And I've actually got my baits soaking in liquid garlic and salt, which are two additives that I use in my fishing all the time anyway. And then on top of that is a trimmed down pink Northern Special. These are really super buoyant hook baits, so I can trim that down to less than half of its size, the pop-up, and it will balance the bait so it sits like that. I want the hook sat on the deck and then the bait just sat like a traditional snowman would be. Along the hook links a blob of putty just to help keep it pinned down, and then I've got one of the XL Naturals anti-tangle sleeves, and that's it. A loop at the end just to use with a quick change swivel on my lead setup. It's a really simple rig, but it's a very effective rig in the right situation. We'll be moving in the next few hours over to the sanctuary, and this will most likely be my starting point on there as well, depending on what we're met with. If there's a lot of weed on the bottom, then a pop-up presentation might be needed. But as I pack the rods away from here, these rigs will be on ready in case there's a quick opportunity when we arrive at the sanctuary. Right, I'm just going to share a little tip with you that my good friend Scott Day actually shared with me in the lead up to me coming on this trip. I was getting my rods ready as you do, and I was tying up some fluorocarbon leaders out of the new Illusion 40-pound Naturals leader material, and I was having a few problems when I was tying my Palomar knot or a grinner knot to my quick change swivel. I was struggling to get my lead clip over the knot so that the eye of the swivel was in line with the hole in the lead clip for the T-peg to go in. Firstly, he said, strangely, is to swap from the size 7 safety lead clip and put a slick lead clip on. Now, the slick lead clip's designed to work with a smaller swivel. However, the internal bore is actually slightly wider than the size 7 safety lead clip. So that, for a start, makes getting it over thick leader knots a lot easier. What he also suggested was, rather than using a Palomar or a grinner knot to tie the leader to the swivel, which is the hook link's then going to attach to, he said do it with a simple overhand loop. You leave the tag off the knot long, and then what you do is you just simply slide your lead clip onto the tag and the leader itself, over the knot of the loop, and then you just pull tight from one end, and it clicks in and goes over. You then, with your scissors, trim off the tag that sticks out, and basically what happens then is your swivel eye lines up perfectly with the eye in the hole in the lead clip, which means you can then put your T-peg in place to secure it. So the T-peg goes in nicely and unhindered. Now the knot is further back up inside the lead clip. It leaves a clear hole, a clear passage for the T-peg to go in. Like I say, you trim off that tag and you've got your lead clip on your leader with a thick leader material, nice and easy. Nothing revolutionary, but a nice tip that Scott shared with me, and one that if you're using thick leader materials like the new 40-pound Illusion or a thick snag mono leader, and you're struggling to get your lead clips on, give it a go.
Prior to testing it, we never knew, did we? No. We were always Well, as you can see, the weather's absolutely idyllic. We need to be wrapping up shortly because we've got a change of venue coming off. And I've just been having a chat with Lee, the owner, and this one's absolutely ripped off, and it actually looks like a bit of a better one. It's the same spot I had the bite off that smaller one yesterday evening, which is really nice. So hopefully this one's woken up a bit now. It didn't really do a lot whilst it was charging through the pads, but now it's, as always, come on, come on. Ooh. Oh, you would choose to do that now. It's absolutely anking it down, wouldn't you? That'll do, won't it? Happy days. Mega. Yes. Well, how about that one then? 26 pounds of lovely mirror carp. Not far off having to reel in because we've got that venue change coming up. So I'm really pleased with this one. Fell to the hinge again on the yellow hook bait on the spot I had that smaller one from yesterday. So yeah, switching to the hinges yesterday was definitely an advantageous move for me. Worked out really well actually. Yes. There he goes. Oh, don't do that. Yeah, happy days. Can I get some help, please?
Well, that's our first leg of our journey to Somerset wrapped up. In the rain, packed away. Everything soaking wet in the van. We're soaking wet. I've managed to take my coat off and put the umbrella up, but Jim's still looking like a drowned rat.
Yep, absolutely.
A tricky first part of this session, but Jim sort of pulled it out of the bag last minute with that beautiful 26 pounder, so well done, Jim.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Thank you for giving us some renewed optimism going into the second part of this trip now. The next venue we're off to, the Sanctuary, is literally a mile away, if that, down the road. It looks like we're going to be setting up in the same horrible weather that we've packed away in and basically sat in for the last 48 hours, but we can't do anything about the weather. Let's just hope that the fish are obliging when we get there.
Do you know what, mate? With the weather as it is, I think there's a real chance, so we just need to be positive, don't we?
Yeah,
we deal with what we're faced with, don't we? And these conditions, they're not bad really, so it'll just be about finding them and seeing where it takes us.
And once you're wet, you can't get any wetter.
Exactly. We're waterproof, it'll dry. So,
right, let's get on the road.
I'm not jumping in your van in my waders, mate.
No, you're not. After getting an absolute soaking whilst packing up at Springwood, we went up down the road to meet up with Mike, the owner of the Sanctuary. We had a brew and a wander around with Mike, and he pointed out likely looking spots and gave us more details about the fish. Upon our lap around the lake, it was clear to see the fish were active. We saw fizzing, colouring up, and even some tail patterns. I think me and Jim were extremely excited at this stage to get going. Okay, I'm not going to talk too loud because I'm fishing very close in. Just put 2 rods out. Fish evidently present. Clouds up, coming up in the water. Lots of big bubbles hitting the surface. And it's happening in multiple locations in this bay, so I'm guessing there's a few fish in this area. Mike, the owner here, tells me that the lake bed is clean, there isn't any weed. I didn't want to do any leading around because the fish are there, so I've literally, with a baiting spoon, just dropped 2 rigs on where the fish are. And it's very exciting because I've been able to get the rigs in position and they're still clouding up. There's still fresh patches of bubbles coming up. Every now and again you're seeing a tail pattern on the water because it's very shallow, a couple of 3 foot maximum. So yeah, it's quite exciting. I'm using the same rig presentation, everything as Springwood. The only thing I've done slightly different here is because this is almost like a stalking situation, is I've used half a bottom bait, and on one rod I've got a tiny 6mm Northern Special pop-up, and on the other one I've got half the GS10 bottom bait with a piece of pink plastic corn. So just smaller hook baits. I feel that these fish are fizzing up and it's not on bait, they're feeding on whatever natural food's in the lake bed there, so I've just, smaller hook bait could make a difference, I'm not sure. And then in the spoon I've put literally a few casters and also half a dozen halved GS10 boilies as well. So I'm going to sit well back from the water's edge now cross my fingers that are quick sanctuary fishes on the carps. So we've been fishing for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and my right hand rod has just melted off. I just said to Ben and Mike, probably going to have to reel in and get my base camp set up for tonight, and it rattled off. It looks like it's a heavily scaled fish. As it rattled off, there was a few bow waves that all went off down the lake. I think it scared all of its mates who were feeding in here as well. Oh yeah, it's a linear, beautiful. Very broad over its back. Here we go. She's in the nets. Oh, she what? Yep, she's in the net. Brilliant. First sanctuary carp in the net, and it's a stunner. Plated linear. Awesome. Well, have a look at that then for an absolute scaly beauty from the sanctuary. Mike tells me this is one of his Stone Acres generation fish. Massive plated scales. Gave a great fight. Immaculate condition. What a way to start our session here. After 2 days of miserable rain, even that stopped now. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting a few more of these absolute beautiful fish. Awesome. Back she goes. Don't tell your friends.
Well, hello. We've changed venues now. Lewis has already had a lovely scaly one as well, and Ben's just come around to catch up with me because he's been with Lewis for the afternoon since we got here. What an incredible place this sanctuary fishery is as well. It's absolutely stunning for a lake that's quite young, and from what Mike, the owner, has been telling us, there's some incredible fish as well. So I was really keen to get sorted. Despite the horrendous conditions and being absolutely drenched, I still had to get round, get sorted and get the rods out. So what I've done, I've baited 4 spots now, a couple in the edge, a couple out a little bit further, just for tomorrow morning essentially, and through the morning to see if any of them clay up and milk up. Because from what we saw on the walk rounds when we got here, you don't necessarily see the fish, but you see the signs of where they've been quite clearly. So I wanted to get that prep work done, and I've got 2 rods out fishing now. I've got one right in the edge, which is on a really, really tight in spot. It's probably only 18 inches from the bank, a couple of foot of water. So I've gone really short on the hook link on that, hard on the bottom with a bait, just over a few broken boilies and a bit of crumb. And then the other rod's slightly out into the pond, into slightly deeper water, still on the clay line, on an area that Mike might have given me the heads up about. So that's gone in that zone as well. So we will see what this evening brings. From what Mike says, most of the bites are day bites. So hopefully, they're in, they're settled, and come first light, they'll give the game away, and we can either react to it or sit on our hands and see if these rods give us an opportunity.
Now it's just occurred to me as I'm unloading the van ready for the first night here on the sanctuary. For any of you out there wondering whatever happened to Ali G's suit, Jim Wilson only went and turned it into a bag. The old Jimmy Wilson clothes bag in conjunction with Ali G. Aye. Well, we've awoken to a beautiful Somerset sunrise this morning, which is fantastic because we were starting to doubt whether the sun actually exists in this county, given the days and days of treacherous rain that we've experienced since we've been here. But it's a much more sociable morning. Unfortunately, the fish haven't been sociable overnight. Nothing to report for myself nor Jim, but that isn't really unexpected. Mike did tell us yesterday that he could probably count on one hand how many fish it's done in the dark before here, so he said it's really about the daytimes. Today is now our opportunity to try and take advantage of that. I've been watching the water intensely this morning, seeing the odd bit of fizzing. I don't want to just start chasing a patch here and a patch there, because quite quickly that's going to probably be counterproductive. So my plan is just to focus in on some areas where there's consistent fizzes or activity, and then when I feel like the timing's right, I will drop a rig on it. So just taking a step back to yesterday evening, I picked this swim. It's kind of middle of the bank as you come in through the gate. I think they call it the pine swim, I presume, because there's a lovely pine tree in the middle of it. Gives a good viewing point. Sort of the way we're fishing is Jim's having one half of the lake on the other side of the islands to me, and then I've got this side. So I've decided to concentrate my two rods on the left hand side of the swim. It's kind of like a double swim. One sort of faces more down the right hand side of the lake, and then one down the left hand side, and I've decided to go on the left hand side. I've put one rod in my margin, down the left hand margin. There's a little peninsula that sticks out. Yeah, that was an area that Mike has said has done the odd good fish in the past. The other rod is going off towards the island, the left hand island. As I look from my swim, there's an aerator a few rod lengths to the left of that. Yesterday there was quite a lot of consistent fizzing, so I literally just dropped with a spoon the rig on that area there. It's probably about 2 to 3 rod lengths short of the island. That rod has had some casters, some chop worm, and then some of the GS10 boilies put on it. So it's again not a lot of bait, just a couple of handfuls. The left-hand rod is just with caster and boilie, no chop worm. There are a lot of perch in here apparently, so I'm kind of hedging my bets by putting the chop worm only on one of the rods. Yeah, that's where we're at. Like I say, we wasn't expecting action through the night, which is why I'm hesitant too early this morning to start moving the rods, because if we didn't expect them to go and they haven't gone, then why change them just yet? So I want to give them the morning period to kind of convince me that I do need to do something different. Hopefully we can find one of those bigger girls, because there's a couple of 40s in here that are absolutely off the chart. So yeah, we wouldn't mind seeing one of them before we leave. So I'll keep you posted.
If I was to sum up this trip so far since we've changed lakes, I'd probably go along the lines of frustrating. Fish showing on me this morning in numbers, moved a rod as a result of some of the shows for him to keep showing on the spot where I moved it to, but no joy. I've had a rod right in the edge round on a little area where I went stalking earlier because of all the colour in the edge, the tail patterns and the movement. They were clearly there in numbers, but whatever they were feeding on, it weren't boilie. And now we've moved down the opposite end of the lake for a couple of hours. We've got 2 out, just poled them both out into position, tiny amounts of bait, and then stand out hook baits. So hopefully we'll see what happens. There is definitely fish out there at the minute. We keep seeing tail patterns, particularly on the left-hand side where I put the left-hand rod, which is slightly longer. So they're just laid on the ground, so I'm just waiting for a clutch to spin off, which will hopefully happen soon.
Well, that unfortunately brings to an end our 24-hour session here on the Sanctuary and our 72 hours in Somerset. Only the one fish between us on this last venue we've been on. Beautiful fish though, and great memories of that yesterday. The fish have proved very tricky, as we warned they would be on the Sanctuary. They're often preoccupied on natural food and very spooky of angling pressure. Even though we've been pretty stealthy and using baiting poles, etc., as soon as you're setting up on them, they're moving on and feeding somewhere else. But in terms of this particular last part of the session, Jim, what would you have done differently if you had your time again for that 24 hours?
I think I was a little bit too cautious yesterday. I set off what I was seeing. I think I should have actually just bitten the bullet, so to speak, and actually set up on the fish. You know, obviously baiting poles, rigs in, and dropping rigs right tight into the reeds off the edge wouldn't have been a great deal of disturbance. So I think I probably was a little bit cautious and sat off them a little bit too much, and should have just sort of bitten the bullet and got in where the fish were, really. I think,
which is what I did at the start.
Yeah, and that worked,
and it
for
worked,
that lovely fish.
Yeah,
so.
But it hasn't worked today as well, unfortunately. But I think after one of their mates got hooked yesterday, it put them on guard. But
yeah, I think so, mate. So
yeah, for me, really on Springwood, I've had obviously 24 hours here now to reflect, thinking about what I should have done differently, and I'm really annoyed with myself that I didn't put long booms and hinge pop-up sections on, because there was a lot of that silkweed and whatnot on the bottom, and I think fishing my fluorocarbon D-rigs wasn't the one in hindsight. And even though I did have one bite, I just felt like for the activity that was in and around that area, I should have done better. And so that's for sure that if I had my time again. But I had my reasons. You know, I'd been on there 3 years ago, and pop-ups weren't the one. I was told, you know, they don't really take pop-ups, and I caught on bottom baits, and that's a big mistake, which I think probably a lot of anglers will do. They'll visit somewhere and they'll go with a pre-idea of what they think's going to work because it's happened before. But lakes are evolving all the time, and that particular lake was a lot different to what it was 3 years ago. So you know, even though I've been fishing a long time, you still learn, don't you? So.
No, of course you do. And I think when you've had those experiences where you've caught somewhere before, you automatically use that as a sort of a benchmark, as a starting point, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, on Springwood, it took me a little while to get through the different sort of connotations and presentations to start getting the bites. And as soon as I did, I was like, why didn't I go straight to it? Because of the situation in front of us. So, but that's all part of the fun, isn't it? Learning every time you go. So.
And I think I would have changed, but obviously getting that little stocky halfway through or whatever, it just makes you think, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's on the right line.
And that is what it is. But either way, we've got scores to settle. It's a good excuse to come back and try different tactics and sort of try and right those wrongs. But 3 nights, 5 fish, can't really argue with that, can we? I don't think.
No, not at all, mate.
We can now enjoy the 4-hour drive back home, and hopefully it's drier.
Yes, next time it'll be a bit drier, hopefully.
Cool, let's get in the car.
Awesome.
What a morning that's been. I'm going to sit here opposite Jim, watch him lose his head, redoing his rods every 5 minutes, pacing up and down the bank, ripping loads off buckets, shouting to himself. Head's totally fallen off, bless.